Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the Enlightenment podcast, part of the Authors on Air Global Radio Network. I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld, and we're so excited to have you joining us today, live and on the replay. Our guest today is Rachael Tamayo. She is the author of Break My Bones and Carnal Knowledge, which we'll be talking about today. Welcome, Rachel. Excited to have you joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
We were just talking a little bit before the show that I have not yet had the opportunity to read Rachel's book, but the synopsis of Carnal Knowledge is right up my wheelhouse, as it has the thriller element, mystery, serial killers, just all woven together. So this is my kind of book that I absolutely love to read. Can you share with our viewers and listeners, Rachael, a synopsis on what Carnal Knowledge is all about?
Sure. Basically, a little bit on the series is the Deadly Sins. It's the second book in this Deadly Sins series. It is the sin of lust. Now, lust in this instance being defined as an unsatisfiable craving, not necessarily sexual, maybe not. You can lust for a lot of different things. That being said, we have the main character, Wren, who is divorced or estranged from her ex-husband because he cheated on her. He's a former police officer, and she is an assistant in a legal office, just early 20s, trying to get back on her feet because her life fell apart because of what her husband did. Mm-hmm. And she finds herself, she goes out with a friend and basically wakes up having been roofied, basically, for lack of a better term. With no memory of what had happened. She only had one drink, wakes up with blood everywhere, with no memory of anything that had occurred. Now she decides not to call the police because she doesn't know what happened. Mm. And in my experience as a veteran 911 operator, because I actually caught a little bit of flack for that. Well, why didn't she call the police? Because a lot of women don't call the police. You know, they're afraid. You know, she's like, well, I went out. Because she was actually on probation in the story for a DWI. And she's like, I wasn't even supposed to be out. I wasn't supposed to be drinking, you know, and they're going to catch me for that. Plus, you know, I wasn't watching my drink, you know, and they're going to say, well, you should have been watching your drink. You know, it's all going to be all my fault. So, you know, that tends to happen. So she decides she's just going to let it go. And time goes by, but it happens again. And basically, the story ends up being she discovers through her ex-husband, who shows up once he realizes what's happening to her, because he starts to get protective, that there is a serial killer out there, but he likes to play with his victims. He's not like your typical serial killer where he just shows up and you're dead. Basically, he'll tease you and toy with you for a while through social media. He'll, you know, this will happen, you know, over and over again. And she finds out she's the first to come forward. And there's been 6 other women that have been killed. So now she's faced with knowing that there's a serial killer after her. And nobody has survived. So what's going to happen? Am I going to die? You know, or am I going to go down fighting, or what's going to happen to me? But I will tell you this. The book has a twist in the end that you won't see coming. You will not see it coming. It is just the best ending I've done to date. I wrote it. I was like, so excited to write that ending. Mm-hmm. Really.
I love your excitement, Rachael, because you always know when you're excited and you see something come in that you had no idea would come, that the readers are going to have that feel right along there with you on the twist when it pops in, like, holy cow, what just happened?
Right. And I write it, and I really hope that it comes through that way, that it surprises them the way I wanted it to, and it did. So far it has. All the feedback I've gotten, every review that I've read, they were just like, the twist in the end, I didn't see it coming. It was just amazing. You're not going to be able to guess who did it.
Mm-hmm. I always like the puzzle pieces, and that's such a fascinating question that I wanted to ask you, Rachael. Is you used to be a police dispatcher as well as a 911 operator. You did write romance for a while, which I think is so fascinating and fun. And then you tried your hand in thriller, and here we are. I would love to hear first how your writing in thriller from your previous experiences has led to the type of settings and characters that you're writing.
Well, I think I tend to fall into the human, like how real people relate to trauma more than a police procedural or crime novel kind of story. Despite the fact how this one sounds, it's not a police procedural story. It's not told from the officer's perspective. We're not following a detective as he solves the crime in this story. You're following her, the victim, on her journey to basically grow through her dealings with her ex-husband and find out who she is. Is she going to be a strong person that pushes through, or is she going to just lay down and die? It's just because my experiences is with how people react to trauma so differently, and people have a tendency to think that if you don't react this way, you're wrong. And in this book, Wren is a person that reacts kind of differently to what happens to her, and it's not your typical meltdown, so to speak. And some people, it doesn't hit them the right way, I guess you could say, because it's not typical. But in my experience, I've seen it. There's so many different ways. There's not any one way that's right or wrong, and you just can't possibly know how you're going to react until it happens to you. And that is addressed in the book too. She actually talks about that.
I love that you bring that up, because you talked about trauma, but also, why you don't speak up in those moments, and how we react in those moments are going to be very different for each individual person based on their experience and surroundings of their own journey. When you were going through writing that journey of Wren, was there someone that resonated with you on her journey and some of the things that she was experiencing and going through that you could implement within her character that you knew about?
Yeah, I struggled at some points with her about how to create her character. And at some point, the story does take on its own, life, and it writes itself. But until that happens, you're sitting there trying to figure out who this person is and what they're going to do in this situation. It really is. I'm like, okay, who's Wren and what is she going to do here? And in all those instances, and I didn't want to portray her as weak. I just wanted to portray her as smart enough to know when the fight was useless, so to speak, not wasting her energy, knowing that things like she got arrested for DWI the first time she ever got behind the wheel, and it was because her husband had cheated on her being a cop. And the fact that she knew he could have gotten her out of it. He could have gotten her out of it knowing that she was arrested by the same department that he worked for, but he didn't. And she could have said something. She just felt like she's like, it's just a waste of time. They're going to be on his side. He's going to. So not that she's right in those thoughts. I don't want to think that. It was just that she just thinks the fight is useless, so I'm not going to waste my energy. But at some point, she has to make some decisions.
Is that where for you writing a psychological thriller, because it's a lot of what's going on in her mind that is the battle that she's trying to win and overcome?
Yeah. Yeah, despite all that, it is actually pretty fast paced. I have a tendency, I like to drop person right into the action on the first page.
Yes.
I guess I hate opening a book that takes 50 pages for anything to happen, because I will close that book and like my life is too short. I have not got time. So yeah, this book first page, something happens, and you find yourself right in the middle of the action. I once read I don't remember what it was an article or something talking about that. It says the best thing you can do to hook your reader in the first couple of pages is to drop them right into the middle of a scene. You know, not a description, not an inner monologue or a description of anything. Right into the middle of an action, right in the middle of a scene, because there's no point in putting backstory in for characters they don't care about. You know, until you have some kind of connection with her. It's like, wait a minute, look what happened to her. You know, look what she did. Then once you're connected with her a little bit, then you can start, you know, putting in a little bit of that. Is what starting with backstory, I feel, is just going to bore the reader and lose them. So it is fast paced, despite the fact that it is a lot in her head.
Did you start then with plot or character, or was it kind of a blend of both that came in at the beginning?
I think it starts with plot, but it's definitely both. Most definitely both. Yeah. I've been struggling with the one I'm writing now forever. Like, I don't want to say it's writer's block, but it's like I can't get the plot right, but I don't know. I might have finally unlocked it, but yeah, I can't write if it's just not the plot, the characters. It just doesn't gel.
So where did your concept for the story first begin? Was it an experience that you had, a headline that you saw, something on TV? Like, what was the first nugget that came in where you got that spark of, this is what I want to write?
Somebody asked me that in another interview, and I'm trying to remember, honestly. I know I think my original idea for this series came from a completely different place. And my ideas tend to do that. They start off as one thing, and then they completely derail and end up as a completely different thing. But I wrote a supernatural thriller called, supernatural romantic, whatever. It's kind of crosses into more than one genre. But paranormal, called Lucifer's Game. And basically what it's about is this woman who is infertile and going through some struggles because of that infertility in her marriage. The devil has been watching her, and basically she's destined to have a child that he's trying to stop because of what that child will do in the future. So he's trying to stop this child. So what he does to stop this child is bring lust in. And now I personified all these characters, the devil and lust, the demons that you would see as ugly, because I was raised as in a very old-time Baptist religious home. And I know a lot about the Bible, and I know that about how the angels fell and, all that stuff. And I'm thinking about how what it says. It never says they became ugly. It just says they fell. So what if they're not ugly? What if they're still beautiful? What if just they changed and became evil? And so lust is this beautiful creature, and he just has these powers over her, and the story continues. So, but everybody loved that character. His name is Devin in that book, and everybody was just like all over themselves over Devin. They loved him. So I was like, what if I created another book with Devin in it? And then I'm thinking lust, and then the 7 deadly sins, and it just kind of, like I said, it derailed and became, something else. But the demon thing just didn't fit in. And I didn't want it to make a demon series. So I had to come up with something else for lust. And I didn't want it to be about sex. So I wanted it to be about a different kind of lust. And it's a tangled kind of lust. It's like bloodlust, and I can't give away a lot because then I don't want to mess up the ending for anybody. But it's woven. Yeah. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but
no, it did, because like when you get an idea, it definitely keeps going and weaving, and then you find places in the homes in either one story or another, for sure.
Right. Sometimes they're very specific ideas, like Break My Bones was, and sometimes they're not, like this one.
I admire you a great deal for writing in a serial killer, as that space, just with being in the serial killer's head, can be really heavy, and because you need to be in there to understand why they're behaving and reacting in the way that they do and are. But that can be really heavy at times too. Did you have an approach as you were writing specifically pieces about the serial killer that helped you be able to get inside the serial killer's head, but then also kind of detox afterward?
It's funny you're asking me that too, because I remember when I was writing this one, and I'm a multi-point of view writer. Mm-hmm. All of my books have more than one point of view, except for Carnal Knowledge. It is the first one that I've ever done from one point of view. And an author friend of mine kind of challenged me. She's like, "You're great," because I've been told the shift is seamless from one character to the other, and I'm really good at shifting characters and keeping characters in their own box. She goes, I dare you to write one from just one perspective. And when I was thinking about her saying that, and I'm thinking about this, and I was trying to figure out how to write it. If I had written it from the killer's perspective also, I just couldn't pull it off. It just wouldn't have worked in this one. But I'm actually facing that same problem right now, because I'm writing the Third Deadly Sins book is scheduled to come out in February of next year, and that one doesn't have a killer or anything in it. That one's done. That one's about greed. But the one I'm writing now is going to be jealousy or envy, and when I write, I tend to start, and then I get to a point where I'm like, something changes, and I back up and I start over. And I'll do it multiple times, and I've done that 5 times in this one now. I think 5 or 8, 6 or so is the most I've done. And I'm in that position now where I'm realizing where the story is going and how where it's taking me. And I'm like, is it too dark? Is it not too dark? I don't think it is, considering, it's a hard place to be, because I write in such a deep place in the character's head. So I'm thinking it's a darker story, I think, than it is, so because I write in the deep point of view that pulls you so deep into that character that you can feel what they're feeling, because I can feel what they're feeling when I'm writing it. So it is a struggle. But yeah, so I write in kind of short bursts. Like I'll write a little bit, and I'll back off for a few days, and then I'll write a little bit more and back off. And I just kind of write in clumps like that, instead of sitting down and writing 10,000 words at one time.
I love multiple POV too, Rachel. That's my favorite to read and write also. And I love the deep emotion within your character. So yeah. What's your favorite? That's a hard question to ask, but do you have a favorite book or movie that is written in multiple POV that you've watched multiple times?
You know, I want to say one of the best movies that you don't see too many movies that do it very well, like not just watching a scene from the outside, but actually shifting heads, basically, is Crash. The one with I don't remember all the characters in it, you know, but basically it's telling this interwoven story. It's like Sandra Bullock, and she's this absolutely horrible person in this movie, you know. And then what's his name? I can't remember the name of that guy that plays the cop. That's kind of he's not really crooked. He's just kind of a jerk, you know.
I want to say Ryan Reynolds, but it's not Ryan Reynolds.
No, I want to say Matt Damon, but it's not Matt Damon either.
Yeah, no.
But Crash, and because you hop from this character's story to that character's story to that character's story, and how they eventually all come together in the end, that is probably one of the best I've ever seen as far as a movie, because you're actually jumping from one story to another, from one character to the other, and not just standing back and watching a scene play out.
I love that. So we talk on the Enlightenment podcast not only about the things that we're creating in art and within our life, but our own hero's journey. Is there a time in your life where you were going through a certain experience where you were really struggling and didn't think that you could be where you are right now?
Yes. I would say yes. I've probably been through quite a few of those. I've been through a lot of struggles. Like I said, I was raised by a very Southern churchy, and I'm not a faithless person by any means. It's just my upbringing was a bit emotionally abusive as far as the religion. It wasn't as far as when I was younger, but it was fairly normal, I think, as I was younger. But as I got older, it changed, and it was because my family wanted me to stay there, and like they wanted me to be little and not grow and not be my own person and think my own thoughts, and it always got me in trouble, basically. Disagreeing, and I'm not a troublemaker by any means, but I do have a bit of a mouth on me, and I mean, you know your strengths and weaknesses, as they say, but but yes, in my struggles with my family really caused me some serious problems and emotional dealings that I still deal with, and thinking things about myself that I realized as I grew later and as after I got away from them that weren't true. And it wasn't until after that I got away from that I actually started writing. None of this happened until after I got away from that. And once I broke that and realized I wasn't what they said I was, and spent some time finding who I actually was, apart from all the things that they had said, I realized that I could do it. And I did. So I did it without them, despite everything. And they supported me when I was little, but when I was younger, because I've been writing since I was like tiny. But I don't think they ever really took it seriously. You know, they never thought I would actually go anywhere. It's like they expected us to go off and live in the woods and just be weird, secluded family, you know, just us forever. So when I wanted to go off and live my own life, it was a problem.
You investigated your own journey, and here you are exploring completely different paths and owning pieces of who you are. So, yes, I'm proud of you. Yes.
Thank you. So I tell my son,
It's huge.
you know, I have an 8-year-old, and I tell him, don't let anybody tell you who you are. Because I spent my entire life having somebody tell me who I was, you know, and, you know, you're not any good unless you're this, or, you know, you're not lovable unless you're this, you know, and me believing it. And till I don't know what happened. It's just like, you know, God's always there despite, you know, you have the abuse, but God's stronger than the abuse. And I think he helped pull me out of it. But yeah, I told my son, don't let anybody tell you who you are. And to anybody that's listening, going through that, don't let anybody tell you who you are. Be who you are. And don't worry about anything else.
Amen. Did you find, Rachel, when you started writing, that your voice was able to come out even more, and that you were letting pieces of yourself that maybe you had blocked for a while start to come out and explore more of who Rachel is and what you wanted to say and think?
Yeah. Because I think it's easier to hide behind the story,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to let things out, because you could stick things into a book that people may not realize are true, you know, which I do actually quite often. Yeah, most definitely. You can stick them in there and it's therapeutic almost. You know, it's like a confession that nobody knows is a confession, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm proud of you and where you are today. I'm super excited to read Carnal Knowledge. We're going to turn it over to the inner child question segment. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. First question. What's something that is thrilling to you, that brings you joy?
I'm a simple person, believe it or not. I am happy. Friday night, actually, just this last Friday, we had got some family and friends together. We had some food. We had a couple of drinks. We sang karaoke. We played Pictionary. We had the best time. Just simple, just family and friends. Honestly, that's thrilling to me. I'm not a high maintenance person, so.
The moments. I love
Mhm.
karaoke and games too.
Oh, me too. I'm terrible at it, but I don't care.
Do you laugh at yourself as amazingly as you are right now? Like, either way, we're just gonna laugh and have a good old time.
Yeah, my niece. I was singing with my niece. She's 12, and she's like, "Oh, you sound good." I'm like, "It's okay. I know I don't. It's all right. But I don't care. I don't mind. It's just fun. I don't care how I sound. It's just fun." Mm-hmm.
Number 2, what is your favorite type of puzzle to do or to search out?
I'm such a problem solver, honestly. I can't help it. Like, you put any problem in front of me, like any problem, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing. My actually current supervisor teased me because I'm not a 911 dispatcher anymore. And she was teasing me. She goes, you know, not everything is a 911 emergency. You can calm down. It's like, no, I can't. I can't help it. It's not necessarily a puzzle, but it's a problem for me to solve. So no matter what it is, and I'll do everything I can within my ability to solve it. I don't know why I'm like that. But I just, yeah.
Do you place a lot of those questions in your books, like the ones that you think of all the time? Like, I wonder what's going on here, or I wonder what that person's actually thinking. Do you find yourself asking those questions and then trying to place them somewhere to solve the problem, per se?
Sometimes, I mean, I try to make the characters as realistic as possible. layered good and bad, because none of us is just good or just bad. So, yes. So, because we will sit there and think things like that. So that, yeah, I do that sometimes.
Third question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you've just tried?
The oddest food combination?
Oddest, yes.
When I was a kid, I used to put mayonnaise on saltine crackers and eat it just like that.
Oh,
I don't do it anymore, but I did when I was a kid.
It's got the salt and the cream and the crunch.
I just really liked mayonnaise. I like mayonnaise now, but not enough to have it like that.
You don't get the spoonfuls and just lick from the mayo jar, Rachel?
No, I don't.
You may do peanut butter, but I do mayo at our house.
No. Yeah, I've had to stop a kid or two from, doing that with butter, but no, but I did that when I was a kid. Mm-hmm.
Did you put like 2 saltine crackers together to make it a sandwich, or was it just 1 saltine cracker and then you just paste it with layers of mayo and call it a day?
I want to say I just did the one. I might have tried both, but I want to say that I just did the one.
2 is just too much work. Just 1 will do fine.
I guess.
Good. Before we end today, Rachel, can you give our listeners and viewers some advice on living a joyful and creative life?
Sure. Joyful is just going to be basically take it one day at a time and don't let anybody take your joy. Because a lot of people will try. Just don't let them. And like I said, be who you are. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks, what anybody else says, because in the end, you are the one that has to live with yourself. And you are the one that has to face your creator, not them. So their opinion doesn't really matter. And those of you that are writing, I stopped writing for many, many years. I wish I hadn't. I can't imagine where I'd be now if I had continued for the 20 years that I lost. So keep at it. Take the constructive criticism, learn from your mistakes, and just keep going.
Thank you for being here with us. And if they have any questions that they'd like to ask you or would like to find your beautiful series and upcoming books, where can they go to find you?
You can find all my information on my website, RachelTamayoWrites.com. You can contact me through the contact form, or you can also contact me through my publicist at Creative Edge.
Perfect. And we will put all those links below in the comments for easy access. Thank you again for all those who came today and joined us and will be on the replay. Also, special thanks to Pam Stack at Authors on Air Global Radio Network and Mickey Mickelson at Creative Edge for sponsoring this show. And before we end today, just remember to find your truth, figure out who you are and who you want to become, and take that journey. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll see you next Monday at 1:00 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.